Hi everyone, and welcome back to Crimson Rift Africa, the channel where we dive into the most disturbing, often overlooked stories from across the continent. If you are new here, this is the place where history, horror, and humanity collide, raw, unfiltered, and deeply African. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This video discusses real-life crimes and includes descriptions of violence and murder. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This content is created for educational and informational purposes only, to examine historical events and criminal cases. We do not condone or glorify the actions of the individuals discussed. In the bustling city of Port Harcourt, Nigeria, during the months of 2019, a shadow moved through the low-cost hotels and guest houses. Young women, many traveling alone or working in vulnerable professions, began disappearing without a trace. At first, the cases seemed isolated, just another unfortunate loss in a city of millions. But soon, a terrifying pattern emerged. Each disappearance shared the same chilling details. Women lured by charm or false promises. Rooms where no one else seemed to notice, and the faint sinister mark of a predator operating in plain sight. This is the story of Gracious David West, one of the worst serial killers in West Africa. A man whose calculated cruelty and methodical planning would terrorize Port Harcourt for months, leaving behind a trail of fear, grief, and unanswered questions. The investigations that followed would reveal the horrifying extent of his crimes and the lives forever altered by his actions. Port Harcourt, the capital of Rivers State in southern Nigeria, is a bustling port city and the heart of the country's oil industry. By the year 2019, it had grown into a city of millions, teeming with commerce, traffic, and constant hum of urban life. The city's low-cost hotels and guest houses, scattered across its centers and suburbs, catered to travelers, workers, and those with limited means, a mix of legitimate visitors and vulnerable population. While the oil industry brought wealth and opportunity, it also created sharp social disparities. Many young women migrated to the city seeking work, safety, or independence, only to find themselves in precarious situations. Limited law enforcement in certain districts and the lack of security in smaller hotels made it easier for predators to exploit these gaps. In this environment, someone like Gracious David West would operate with relative ease. The anonymity of crowded streets, poorly monitored hotels, and the transient nature of the city's population allowed him to prey on unsuspecting women while remaining largely undetected. Port Harcourt's thriving yet chaotic urban landscape would provide the perfect backdrop for a serial killer to strike repeatedly before the authorities connected the dots. Between July and September, Port Harcourt saw a troubling pattern. Young women began disappearing from low-cost hotels and guest houses across the city. Many of these women were sex workers, traveling alone or seeking temporary work. Vulnerable populations often overlooked in the daily bustle of a busy port city. Their transient lifestyle, limited social support, and the stigma surrounding their work meant that their absence were not always reported immediately, and when they were, investigations were often slow. The police initially treated each disappearance as an isolated incident. Officers collected hotel guest logs, interviewed staff, and searched for any witnesses. But the fragmented nature of the reports made it difficult to see a pattern. Families of the missing women grew anxious, frustrated, and fearful, struggling to get authorities to take decisive actions. Many hotels lacked security cameras or even proper registers, leaving investigators with few leads. Rumors began to circulate within the city. Friends and relatives shared stories of women who left home with hope but never returned. Some families suspected foul play, but the lack of tangible evidence meant that the cases remained unsolved. The community's anxiety grew with each disappearance. yet the connection between the missing women remained hidden. A chilling silence that would soon be broken as investigators began to piece together the unsettling truth. In early September, a piece of evidence surfaced that would change the course of the investigation. A CCTV video began circulating on social media, capturing a man leaving a hotel late at night in Port Harcourt, calm, deliberate, and seemingly ordinary. The footage was immediately important to investigators. It provided the first visual link between the disappearances and a single individual. Authorities traced the location to the TM Hotel, the last place Antonia Ibe had been seen. The images revealed subtle but chilling details. The way the man paused to glance around before leaving, the calculated manner in which he moved through the hotel corridors, and the unhurried steps that masked the violence committed moments earlier inside. Once the footage circulated, the public reacted quickly. Citizens recognized the man, and rumors spread across the city, intensifying pressure on the authorities. Investigators realized that this single piece of evidence could tie the suspect to the ongoing pattern of missing women, offering a critical breakthrough in an investigation that had so far been hampered by limited leads and scattered reports. The footage became the focal point for law enforcement. It allowed them to piece together timelines, cross-reference hotel logs, and identify potential witnesses. While the footage gave investigators a crucial visual lead, another discovery would provide even more insight into the predator's methods. Police learned that one woman had survived an encounter that could have ended her life. Benita Etim, a 23-year-old sex worker, had narrowly escaped. She described being lured to a hotel under the guise of companionship and payment. Once inside, she had been threatened with a knife, restrained with strips of bed sheets, gagged, and sexually assaulted. In a terrifying twist, her attacker left the room with her phone, assuming she could do nothing to escape. Benita managed to free herself the following morning and immediately reported the ordeal to the authorities. Her testimony offered investigators vital details. The methodical way the attacker restrained victims, the use of hotel rooms with minimal security, and the precise manner in which he controlled and isolated women. Combined with the footage showing a man leaving the TM Hotel on the night Antonia disappeared, Benita's account gave the police a clearer picture of the suspect and his systematic approach. Authorities intensified their search. Every bus station, hotel, and commercial area was monitored, and security agents coordinated to track movements matching the suspect's profile. On September 19th, the operation succeeded. Gracious David West was located attempting to leave Port Harcourt on a commercial bus bound for Uyo in Akwa Ibom State, just 45 minutes away. He was immediately apprehended, ending the months-long reign of terror that had gripped the city. The arrest sent shockwave through the country. This capture marked the turning point in the investigation. With the suspect in hand, the authorities could now begin piecing together the full extent of his crimes, linking him to the victims, corroborating survivor testimony, and preparing for the legal proceedings that would follow. Gracious David West was born in the fishing town of Buguma, Rivers State, a coastal community in southern Nigeria. The area, known for its mangrove swamps and proximity to the oil industry, had a history of militancy and economic disparity, factors that shaped the lives of many who grew up there. He was reportedly an only child in a polygamous family, though he and his mother lived separately from the rest of the household. Little is publicly known about his early life, schooling, or formative experiences, but those who encountered him described a man with erotic behavior and quick temper. By 2019, at the age of 40, David West had established himself in Port Harcourt, blending into the city's bustling streets and low-cost hotels. Police later revealed that he had been affiliated with the Greenlanders, also known as the BAM, a mafia-style street gang that emerged from earlier armed militant groups in Niger Delta. While it's unclear how deeply he was involved, His association with such networks may have influenced his sense of impunity and his ability to navigate vulnerable urban areas. He employed deception and charm to gain their trust, posing as a military officer or a man offering financial reward. He approached women with confidence and persuasion. Once they agreed to meet him, he led them to a hotel room under the pretense of companionship or work. Inside, his demeanor shifted from polite to controlling. David West restrained his victims using strips of bed sheets, bending their hands, feet, and even mouths. He used these improvised restraints to immobilize them completely, ensuring they could not raise any alarm. Threats with a knife or other forms of intimidation reinforced his control, leaving his victims powerless and terrified. Sexual assault was often part of the crime. After violating the women, he would rob them of money, valuables, and personal belongings before ending their lives. Strangulation, using the same strips of bed sheets, became his signature method, a quiet yet deadly approach that allowed him to kill repeatedly without immediate detection. Despite his violent tendencies, David West maintained a degree of normalcy in public. He moved calmly through the streets, entered hotels without raising suspicion, and blended into a population where law enforcement oversight was limited. This duality, the ordinary exterior concealing a methodical predator, allowed him to commit multiple murders over several months before the authorities were able to connect the dots. The victims of gracious David West were young women trying to survive in a city that offered both opportunity and risk. Their lives, often overlooked by society, became the target of a calculated predator. The survivor, Benita, narrowly escaped death. On August 18th, she met David West, who lured her to a hotel room with promises of payment and companionship. Once inside, he threatened her with a knife, restrained her with strips of bed sheets, gagged her, and sexually assaulted her. Other women were not as fortunate. Jennifer Nwokocha had traveled from Lagos to Port Harcourt to celebrate her birthday. She met David at her hotel, shared drinks, exchanged numbers, and later returned to meet him. That night, she would never return home. Police found her bound and strangled with bedsheet strips, a method David used consistently across his victims. The known victims included Maureen Ewuru, who died at the Brooklyn Hotel on July 30th, Jennifer Nwokocha, who died at the Venice Hotel on August 14th, Linda Waripa, who died at Avery Guest House in Oyigbo on September 6th. Dorcas Francis died at the Imperial Hotel on September 9th. Blessing Ifyong died at Toki Hotel. Rose Samuel died at Lassa Steve Hotel in Omoku on September 12th. Kelechi Bridget Onwoha died at Pechik Hotel on September 13th. Patience Hamo died at Torox Guest House on September 18th. And Antonia Ibe died at TM Hotel. David West attacks followed a terrifyingly consistent pattern. The psychological component of Gracious crimes was equally disturbing. He carefully observed each victim, learning their habits and the best way to manipulate them. He understood the gaps in hotel security, the transient nature of his victims' lives, and the societal indifference that often surrounded sex workers. This knowledge allowed him to operate with near impunity for months, striking repeatedly while avoiding suspicion. Even in his movements outside the crime scene, he maintained a facade of normalcy. He walked through the streets like any other citizen, blending into crowds and choosing locations that allowed him to disappear into the city after committing his crimes. Each attack followed a predictable pattern, yet the horror of his actions was amplified by the randomness with which he chose his next victim. The city's population, unaware of the unfolding pattern, continued their daily routine while David West exploited every vulnerability. A predator concealed with the ordinary rhythm of urban life. Once in custody, Gracious David West was subjected to intense questioning by police investigators.
After that, we were inside the club. After that, she discussed how much I would pay her. So after that, we left the club to the hotel.
What is the name of the hotel? Can you remember the name of that?
Back beyond. It's about that Rumoko, that's
Okay, Sasford. Rumokoro.
No, Rupoko.
Rupoko, okay. Yes, so what happened when you go
So
there?
after that, we went to the hotel.
Yes.
I paid for the place. So they took her to the hall. So after they took her, I said, okay, let me refer you to arrange for food. I should eat myself. So they prepared food and we ate. So after that, we slept till when the day broke by around that 5:30. Yes, 5:30 to let's say 4 or 5:30. So I brought out a knife. She didn't actually know that there was a knife there. So I brought out a knife. That threatened her that let her don't shout. Then she shouted and we used the knife on her. So with that fear, she couldn't shout. And by then the television, the volume was
Loud.
Yes, loud. So she kept quiet, and after that, I used the wrapper to tie her heads from the back and tie her legs.
Which rapper?
Pillowcase.
Okay, pillowcase.
Yes,
From the outset, he appeared calm and measured, offering statements that were inconsistent at times, complicating the investigations. Authorities sought to determine not only the full scope of his crimes, but also whether he had acted alone or with the accomplices. During initial interrogations, David West confessed to multiple murders. However, he later recanted parts of his confession, denying involvement in some of the cases, claiming the evidence was circumstantial. Investigators relied on corroborating evidence, survivor testimony, CCTV footage, and physical evidence from crime scenes, which consistently aligned with the initial statements. His demeanor during interrogation was erratic. He sometimes displayed arrogance, attempting to manipulate officers with his knowledge of local social structures and his apparent familiarity with law enforcement procedures. Investigators meticulously documented each session, ensuring that any voluntary admission could be used in court. This process allowed them to build a timeline of events, reconstruct the crimes, and understand his methods, a methodical and patient approach that was essential to prepare for prosecution. Gracious David West's trial began in October 2020 at a Rivers State High Court in Port Harcourt. The case had drawn significant public attention, as months of murders had left the city fearful and outraged. Initially, David West had pleaded guilty to the murders while unrepresented by a lawyer. However, the judge insisted that the gravity of the crimes required a formal trial, ensuring due process and a full examination of evidence. During the trial, the prosecution presented a detailed account of 9 murders and 1 attempted murder, supported by CCTV footage, survivor testimony, and physical evidence collected from hotels where the crimes occurred. Benita, the survivor, provided a harrowing description of her encounter. Although she did not appear as a witness in court due to safety concerns, her encounter had already been integral to linking David West to the strings of murders. Each victim's story was recounted in court. The prosecution emphasized the systematic nature of his crimes, how he lured victims using false promises, controlled them using threats and restraints, sexually assaulted them, robbed them, and ultimately murdered them using bedsheet strips. Several hotel staff and managers were called to testify, confirming his repeated presence and suspicious behavior prior to the crimes. The defense, however, attempted to challenge some of the evidence and the recanted portions of his confession, claiming the circumstances were misrepresented. However, the court relied heavily on the combination of his voluntary statements, the CCTV footage, hotel records, and the patterns of his attacks to establish guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The trial also revealed that David West had confessed to 6 additional murders. This was in Abia, Imo, Edo, Lagos, and other states, but insufficient evidence prevented prosecution for those cases. Public reaction to the trial was intense. The residents and the families of the victims followed the proceedings closely, demanding justice. Protesters had previously marched in the city, calling for action against the killer, and the trial was seen as a culmination of those demands. On conviction, the judge sentenced Gracious David West to death by hanging, reflecting the severity of his crimes. The judge also found him guilty of attempted murder for the attack on Benita. Following the sentencing, his lawyers filed an appeal in November 2021. The appeal challenged both the procedural aspect of the trial and certain evidentiary points, arguing that parts of the confession had been improperly admitted and the gravity of the death sentence warranted reconsideration. Despite these legal maneuvers, the appeal faced significant obstacles. The prosecution's case was robust, supported by CCTV footage, survivor testimony, hotel records, and multiple forensic links to the crimes. Public opinion in the city also exerted pressure, with families of victims and residents demanding that justice be fully enforced. Ultimately, the appeal did not overturn the conviction or sentence. The death penalty remained in place, affirming the court's position that David West's systematic premeditated killings warranted the maximum punishment under Nigerian law. The conviction of Gracious David West brought a sense of relief to Port Harcourt, but the scars left by his crimes ran deep. Families mourned the loss of daughters, sisters, and friends, many of whom had disappeared under harrowing circumstances. The grief was compounded by the fact that some of the victims had little family support or community presence, leaving gaps in both remembrance and closure. Legally, the case became a precedent in Nigerian criminal justice for handling serial killings and coordinating evidence across multiple crime scenes. It also reinforced the role of modern technology, such as CCTV and social media, in connecting seemingly isolated incidents and aiding law enforcement investigations. For survivors like Benita, the psychological aftermath was profound. Her testimony had been central to the investigation, yet surviving such an ordeal left lasting trauma. Ultimately, the David West case served as a stark reminder of human cruelty and resilience. While the predator was brought to justice, the city of Port Harcourt and Nigeria at large were forced to confront the societal conditions that allowed such crimes to occur. The memory of the victims endures, both as a testament to their lives and as a cautionary tale for the protection of the vulnerable individuals in society. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Comment your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next one. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.